for funny stories, and my Aunt Betty, and all my crazy relatives that have led to a lot of my funny columns over the years. I don't think I could have gotten through what I'm going to tell you about was the low point in my life. I think you have to wear an evening gown and an Ellie Mae Clampett girdle to talk about something like this. Everybody always thinks that when you're perky and happy, and I don't mean perky this way, when you're always on and you're laughing, because humor is my gift. It's my, it's my tool to heal. But they don't think that you would be subject to depression because you're always joking and laughing and having a good time, and that's mostly how I am. But after about 19 years of marriage to Tidy Stew and the ass bangs and all the other stuff, cleaning, the obsessions, he was a good father, he's a good person, a great jazz musician, but I knew that if I lived with him one day longer, I would die. And my parents were very, very, very much against divorce. They're now Methodists, but they were Southern Baptists. And my sister, the rich, pretty, skinny sister, she had already gotten a divorce. So for my parents, that was like, okay, that's the odds, 50-50. One more child getting a divorce, and we're a terrible family. That just looks really bad on us. 2 daughters, 2 divorces. So they didn't want me to get divorced. They, wanted me to hang in there, and I was a people pleaser, and I got really, really sick, very, very sick. This is the hard part.
Love you.
Thank you. I just remember, and I'm not going to read from that part of the book, but I remember one night I was drinking some red wine, and I knew I couldn't live. I loved my children, but I couldn't live anymore like I was living, or I would die, and I wouldn't be there for them. So I checked into the Ramada Hotel, where my friend is staying now, from Baltimore. I checked into the Ramada, and I took a bottle of pills, and I drank a bunch of wine, and I woke up, and I wasn't dead. So I figured, shit. I'm like Lady Miss Bridget, the doll. I was pretty incontinent at that point. Blind, incontinent. I had vomit on me, and somehow I made sure that night that I was going to end it, that my children were in a safe place, and they were with their dad, who, like I said, is a good father. And somehow, I don't know how, but my parents found out that I was drunk and trying to go swimming at the Ramada at 10 a.m. with a 6-pack of Millers, which reminds me of the days of Gremlins and Vegas and Pintos. Miller High Life, at 10 a.m. at the Ramada, just because your little suicide attempt didn't work. Because I think part of me wanted to live as much as God, because I'm just kind of the glass half full kind of girl. And so Mom and Dad took me to Copestone, which I didn't want to go to, which is what I call the Nut Hut. And I went there, and I remember the very first day I had breakfast there. First they put me on the psycho ward where you don't have blinds or sheets or curtains or anything. And then they determined I could go over to the place with the sporks, the plastic forks. I graduated to the spork section. And I looked over at breakfast. And there was a man there. And he had sores all over his head. And he had the most southern accent I had ever heard, and all these scabs all over his head. And I thought, well, that poor gay man in here with the what do you call it, the sores on his head. And I felt really bad for him. And later I learned that he looked at me that same day at breakfast and thought, why is a middle-aged hooker in here? we went through the next few days at Copestone. He was there because his wife of 20 years had left him for somebody, and I was there because I couldn't take Tidy Stew anymore, and I had left him, and we always bonded at breakfast, me and this guy that thought I was the hooker, and I thought he was having an AIDS episode, and so we would bond at breakfast, and for some reason, they diagnosed us all, every single one of us, with bipolar. That nobody had a different diagnosis, but we all had different pills. It makes no sense whatsoever. You know, if you have a single diagnosis, you should get the same pill. Well, we called it the med sled because every morning we'd shuffle up. And we'd get our little Dixie cup full of meds. So at breakfast and lunch and dinner, they gave me the eat everything, you are hungry as shit meds. And they gave this Southern man that I thought was so charming and delightful with the sores on the head, they gave him the skinny person meds. So I gained 11 pounds in 7 days eating everybody's food at home. And while I was there, they give you activities for healing, which this one doesn't make a bit of sense, okay? You have art therapy. And what you do is you go in there and they give you dream catchers and little jewelry boxes and little treasure chests, and you paint them and you give them to your loved ones. So that one day, 20, 30 years down the road, they can say, look what me mom made it. I burned it. I don't know what I did with it. But another day we had music therapy, and it was from a woman completely void of any joy in her life. She must have been about 80, 90 years old, and she hated us all. You could tell she hated her job, and she thought we were crazy. Because we were crazy. And she led a class called music therapy. And she put on the CD, she put on the soundtrack from The Big Chill. She thought she was so hip. So she heard it through the grapevine, and she started moving like this. Heard through the grapevine. And here we are, drugged out. All I wanted to do was eat. I didn't even want to be in there. And then this man with the sores on his head, he starts clogging. He starts clogging away, and it didn't match the music or anything. So then I thought, well, you know, he's having fun, so I started twerking. And so the doctor released him, and he was clogging, and the doctor put in my chart, Miss Reinhardt has had a manic episode. She needs more meds. Well, the most romantic thing happened. I found out that the guy with the sores and the delightful Southern accent was heterosexual, which matches my views, which I don't care about yours because, you know, I'm the liberal of the family. Anyway, he was prime rib to me. Because he could write up my divorce papers right there in Copestone. He can clog, and he's a lawyer, and he can get me divorced before I get out of here. So he started writing up my divorce papers because I was separated, and if I wasn't, I wouldn't tell you. But I was separated, and the most romantic thing happened in the world. He was released by his doctor, and his doctor said, he told his doctor, he goes, I'm not well, I'm still very, very depressed, and I need to stay a few more days. Because he loved me, and he wanted to stay with me. So, my husband Donnie and I, who's in the audience, we met at Copestone, and we've been married 4 years.